The deck plates vibrated under Maia's feet as another impact shook the hull. She grabbed the armrest of her command chair and rode the shutter out, her cracked rib sending a bright spike of pain through her chest. She did not let it show on her face. Jance was at the helm, his hands moving over the dead console as if he could will it back to life. He tried the comms again. Nothing but static and the low whistle of vacuum bleeding through a crack somewhere in the outer bulkhead. The emergency lights painted everything in stark red. The air smelled of burnt insulation and ozone, a sharp chemical bite that coated the back of her throat. Engineering came through on the internal line. Maia tapped her earpiece and listened. The drive was dead, a cascade failure in the primary reactor coupling. The secondary had tripped into safe mode and refused to re-engage. Life support had 48 hours at current consumption rates, less if they lost another atmosphere scrubber. The hull was breached in 3 places, Section 7, Section 12, and a small puncture near the aft cargo bay. The emergency seals held for now. 67 crew alive, no way home. She looked at the forward viewport. The veil stretched out before them, a curtain of dark dust and dim stars that marked the contested border. Beyond it lay the Flintshard free systems. They would not welcome a human warship limping into their territory. But the nearest human relay station was on the other side of the nebula, 3 weeks at full burn. The Hastings could not make 3 hours. She made her decision. Jance heard it in her voice before she finished the first sentence. His hands stopped moving. He turned and looked at her, and she saw the question in his eyes, the same question she had asked herself twice already on the long drift out here. She did not answer it. She gave the order, drift into Flintshard territory, kill the transponder, run silent, find the relay station at the edge of their space and pray that someone on their side was willing to listen before the Hastings became a tomb. Jance acknowledged the order. His voice cracked on the last word. She wanted to tell him it would be fine. She wanted to tell him she had a plan. She had nothing but a broken ship and a desperate hope that the universe was slightly less cruel than it had always proven to be. 12 hours passed. The Hastings drifted through the dark, a ghost moving between the dust clouds, and for a brief stretch of time Maia let herself believe they might make it. The seals held. The life support ticked down but held. The crew moved through their tasks with the quiet efficiency of people who had learned to function inside a disaster. Then the Flintshard response came. It was not a rescue hailing frequency. It was a warning tone, sharp and discordant, followed by a message in clipped galactic standard. The words appeared on the main display because the audio system could barely manage a whisper. Quarantine boundary established. Do not approach, you are corrupted. Maia stared at the words. Corrupted. She had expected territorial demands, political posturing, a standard border violation dispute that they could negotiate through or fight through. She had not expected that word. The viewscreen flickered and resolved into a figure, a Flintshard. He was smaller than the warriors she had seen in diplomatic briefings, his crystalline structure smoother, catching the emergency lights like oil on water. Layers of crystal rotated around a dark core, and when he spoke, his voice resonated at a frequency that made her teeth ache. He demanded to know why the Hastings was still operational. Its damage reports indicated it should be dead. She understood the question. She saw the genuine confusion in his shifting form. He was not being hostile. He was asking a sincere question, the same way a scientist might ask why a broken instrument still produced readings. She explained that human ships were built with redundancy, multiple systems, backups for the backups. Nothing critical depended on a single point of failure. He repeated the word, redundancy. He tasted it. She watched him turn it over in his mind, his crystals shifting through a sequence of colors she did not recognize. Then he cut the connection without another word. An hour passed. Maia used that hour to walk the ship. She visited engineering and watched the technicians coaxing fractions of power from dead conduits. She stopped in the medical bay and let Leander Bix check her rib while pretending she did not see the exhaustion in his eyes. She stood in Section 12 and pressed her hand against the emergency seal, feeling the cold vacuum on the other side. She was in the mess hall when the broadcast began. It came through every channel at once. The comms, the internal speakers, even the emergency alert system. A voice that carried a pressure beneath it, a subsonic hum that pressed against her chest and made the crew around her wince. Kivon of the Shattered Choir. His image filled every screen. He was larger than Xel had been, his crystalline form jagged and aggressive, spikes of dark mineral rotating around a core that pulsed with a deep red light. The air in the mess hall seemed to thicken as he spoke. He declared the Hastings an abomination, a corpse that refused to fall silent, a violation of the natural law that governed all things, the law that damage must lead to silence. Maia stood in the middle of the mess hall, surrounded by her crew, and listened to a being she had never met explain that her ship's survival was not a miracle. It was a heresy. He ordered the ship destroyed. The broadcast cut out, the screens went dark. Maia stood in the silence, and she realized the truth of what she was facing. This was not politics. This was not a territorial dispute they could resolve with a treaty or a show of force. The Flintshard were not refusing to help because of strategy or suspicion. They were refusing because they genuinely believed the Hastings was wrong. Not damaged. Wronged. Like a mathematical error given form, like a sentence that refused to end. Her ship's survival was an act of heresy in their eyes, not an act of engineering. She had no frame of reference to negotiate with that. She walked back to the bridge. Her leg ached. Her rib burned with every breath. She sat down in her command chair and looked at the forward display. The low hum of the approaching Flintshard warships had grown louder. She felt it in her teeth now, a vibration that settled in her jaw and would not leave. 3 ships, maybe 4. She could not get a clear reading through the nebula. The Hastings had no shields, no drive, no way to fight back. Jance looked at her. His hands were no longer shaking. He had moved past that into something else, something quieter and worse. She looked around the bridge, at her crew, at the people she had led into this dead end. They were going to die here, not in a battle, not in a sacrifice that meant something. They were going to die because a species she had never met believed her existence was an error that needed correction. The vibration in her teeth grew stronger. She turned to Jance. "Get me a channel to Xel, open frequency. I do not care if they hear it." Jance stared at her. "Captain, they just declared us abomination." She nodded. "I know, open the channel." He opened the channel. Maia looked at the main display and waited. The warships grew closer. The hum climbed in pitch until it was almost unbearable. She began to speak. The light inside the chantry of echoes did not fall. It fractured. 700 Flintshard delegates stood in a great ring around the polished floor, their crystalline bodies splitting the projection into 1,000 overlapping images. The Hastings floated at the center of the hollow, a ghost made of light and static. Kivon of the Shattered Choir stood at the focal point. His body resonated at a frequency that made the dust on the ceiling tremble. He let the silence stretch, let every shard in the chamber feel the weight of what they were about to witness. The projection played, the human ship drifting, no drive emissions, no life support bleed, dead in every measurable way. Then the scan results flickered across the visual field, redundant systems, backup conduits, emergency seals. A vessel that had been crippled and simply refused to stop existing. Kivon let the data hang in the air. He turned slowly, his facets catching the light of 1,000 witnesses. "This is what they do." His voice carried no aggression, only the flat certainty of a fact observed. "They take damage that should end them. They absorb it. They continue." The human vessel suffered 3 hull breaches and a reactor containment failure. By every law of physics, it should be cold debris. He paused, the assembly waited. It is not debris. It is still broadcasting, still moving, still alive. A murmur passed through the crowd. Low frequency, unease, not agreement. Kivon raised a single crystalline arm. "This is not survival. This is a corruption. Damage is the natural end of all things. The universe breaks. The universe falls silent. That is the order we were given. These humans refuse the order. They refuse the silence." The murmur grew. Some delegates shifted, their facets darkening. A smaller form stepped forward from the edge of the ring. Xel of the resonant voice. His structure caught the light like oil on water, shifting colors as he moved. He did not approach the center. He stayed at the perimeter, a deliberate distance. "The human ship is not corrupted," Xel said. His voice was softer, a higher frequency that cut through the rumble. "It is adapted. It has learned to endure conditions that should destroy it. That is not a violation of the natural order. That is evolution." The word landed like a crack in glass. Static filled the chamber, hisses and pops from 100 delegates who recoiled as if struck. Evolution was not a scientific term in their language. It was a heresy. It implied the universe could improve on itself. It implied the Creator had made something incomplete. Kivon turned toward Xel. The air between them thickened. A subsonic pressure built in Kivon's core, radiating outward in waves that made the nearest delegates vibrate with discomfort. "You speak of evolution as if it were a gift," Kivon said, "as if the universe needs improvement, as if the natural order is insufficient." Xel did not retreat. "I speak of what I observed. The human ship did not survive because of luck. It survived because its creators built it to fail gracefully. That is not corruption, that is intelligence." The pressure increased. Kivon's resonance shifted, doubled, pressed against Xel's structure. The smaller Flintshard's facets began to vibrate, a high-pitched whine that signaled strain. Xel took a single step back, then another. Kivon did not let up. The first law of the shard he recited. His voice filled the chantry. "All things break. Every shard, every star, every world. Nothing is immune, nothing is eternal." The assembly resonated with him now, a low hum of agreement. All things fall silent, Kivon continued. "Every voice ends, every resonance fades. That is the natural order, that is the law we were given." He turned in a slow circle, addressing the entire ring. "The humans do not break, they do not fall silent. They are a violation of the first law. They carry this corruption with them. It spreads through contact, through trade, through the simple act of existing near them. We have tolerated their presence for 300 cycles. We have watched them integrate. We have watched them teach other species their ways." His voice dropped. The pressure in the room became physical, a weight pressing against every shard in the chantry. "And now we know what they are. They are the unbroken, and the unbroken must be cleansed." Silence, absolute. 700 Flintshard held still, their facets dimmed. Then slowly, one delegate at the far edge of the ring raised a single crystalline arm. A second followed. A third. Within 30 seconds, every arm in the chamber was raised. The room filled with a vibration that shook dust from the ceiling and loosened flakes of nickel iron from the walls. Kivon felt it. The unity flowed through him like a current, warm and electric. 700 voices singing the same frequency. 700 minds aligned into a single purpose. He had given them direction. He had given them a target. He had filled the silence in their cores with the promise of action. And in that moment of absolute connection, something flickered at the edge of his awareness. A doubt, a question. Was he saving them? Or was he using them to drown out the quiet that had lived inside him since his own voice had first fractured cycles ago? He crushed the thought before it could crystallize. "The holy purification," he said. The words came out clear and steady. "For the first time in 300 cycles, the free systems will move as one. We will find the unbroken. We will remove them from the universe." The chamber erupted, a deafening chord of agreement, a sound that resonated through the asteroid and into the ships docked at its surface. The signal spread, from the chantry to the fleet, from the fleet to the free systems. Millions of individual vessels, each piloted by a shard mind, translated into human space in a single synchronized motion. Their course was a straight line. It aimed at the core colonies. Kivon stood at the center of the chantry as the last echoes of the resonance faded. The floor was empty now. The delegates had returned to their ships. Only Xel remained, standing at the edge of the ring, his facets dimmed and his structure slightly misaligned from the pressure Kivon had applied. Xel did not speak. He simply turned and walked toward the exit, his footsteps clicking against the polished floor. Kivon watched him go. He felt the unity still thrumming through his core. He felt the purpose, the direction, the ecstasy of 700 voices singing as one. But the silence inside him had not filled. It had only changed shape. The ceiling shed another plume of dust as the shelling walked closer. Leander Bix pressed the nanomedic injector against Sergeant Wren's right stump and pulled the trigger. The slurry hissed into exposed tissue. Wren did not scream. He did not even flinch. His eyes stayed locked on the cracked tablet propped against his pillow. 6 drone icons glowed green on the tactical display. 5 more remained gray, expended. The railgun swarm was almost dry. Leander moved to the left leg. The tourniquet had held, but the tissue above it was already gray. He pressed the second injector home. The gray slurry met gray flesh and began its work. Wren twitched once, that was all. "You're stable," Leander said. "Don't move." "Not moving." Wren's thumb dragged across the tablet screen, adjusting a firing angle. 3 more coming up Sector 7. They're using the crater from the last shell. Leander looked at the wound. The nanomedics were sealing the capillaries, knitting the dermal layers, flooding the site with synthetic platelets. It would hold. It would not regrow what was gone, but it would hold. The bombardment stopped. The silence had weight. It pressed against Leander's eardrums like a physical force. He had learned to hate silence. Silence meant the shells had found their target and the gunners were satisfied. Silence meant the next phase was coming. The ground assault alarm blared from the wall speaker. Leander turned. Corporal Solon was already on her feet, her face pale beneath the grime and stimulant sweat. Evacuation route is through the basement tunnel. Non-combatants first. Move them, Leander said. Now. Wren grabbed his wrist. The grip was absurdly strong for a man with no legs and a chest full of synthetic repair agents. I'm not done. You have no legs, Sergeant. I have arms and I have drones. Wren pointed at the tablet. 3 incoming. They'll be at the wall in 90 seconds. I can kill them from here. Leander looked at Solon. She shook her head once. The calculation was written on her face, the same calculation every field medic made a dozen times a shift. Who could be moved and who could be saved and who was already dead but refused to admit it. Give him a firing port, Leander said. Solon's mouth opened, closed. She grabbed Wren under the arms and dragged him across the blood-slicked floor to the reinforced blast window. He did not cry out. He did not make a sound. He just adjusted the tablet grip and kept his eyes on the display. The first breach charge detonated. The sound hit the basement a second later, a percussive crack that rattled the medical instruments on their trays. Leander felt it in his teeth. He heard the Flintshard before he saw them. Their bodies produced a harmonic resonance when they moved, a shifting frequency that vibrated through the concrete. It was not a sound so much as a pressure against the inside of his skull. Wren fired. The first salvo of railgun drones launched from the rooftop battery. Leander watched the tactical display as 6 dots streaked toward the breach point. The Flintshard response was immediate. Point defense fire lanced up from the ground, taking out 3 of the drones before they reached terminal velocity. Wren guided the remaining 3 with eye movements alone. The interface tracked his pupils and translated the vector into ballistic corrections. It was not supposed to work this well. The system required fine motor control in the neck and shoulders, and Wren had been using both to drag himself across a floor. He made it work anyway. 2 drones found their targets. The electromagnetic accelerators fired their slugs at hypersonic velocity. The impact signatures bloomed on the display, 2 Flintshard down, their crystalline bodies shattered into inert fragments. The third drone was intercepted 10 meters from its target. Wren adjusted, reloaded, fired again. 3 more Flintshard fell. Leander worked through the motions of triage, checking the wounded who could not be moved, applying sealant to chest wounds, setting bone with quick-field splints. He could hear Wren's breathing becoming wet. The nanomedics were working, but they could not rebuild a lung that was already perforated. The return shot came from a Flintshard marksman positioned on the collapsed wall of the Civic Hall. The particle beam punched through the blast window and took Wren through the chest. He did not scream, he did not fall back. His thumb dragged across the tablet one last time. Another drone fired, another Flintshard fell. Then Wren's hand went slack. The tablet slid from his fingers and cracked against the floor. Leander was at his side in 3 seconds. The wound was catastrophic, a fist-sized cavity through the left thoracic cavity, exiting below the shoulder blade. The nanomedics were already flooding the site, but there was nothing left to repair. The heart was gone. The lungs were shreds. Wren's eyes were still open. His mouth moved. No sound came out. His hand twitched toward the tablet. Leander closed his eyes for 1 second. Then he moved to the next patient. Xel of the resonant voice was brought into the hospital 20 minutes later. 2 soldiers flanked him with rifles raised, but he offered no resistance. His crystalline body caught the emergency lighting and scattered it into rainbow fragments across the blood-smeared walls. He moved with a deliberate precision, each footfall measured, each harmonic click of his structure timed like a metronome. He was unharmed. He had surrendered willingly. Leander did not look up from the wound he was sealing. "We don't take prisoners." "The prisoner insisted on being brought here," one of the soldiers said. "Said he needed to see the medical bay." "I needed to see you." The voice was clean galactic standard, shaped by a resonance chamber in Xel's throat that vibrated the air around his words. Leander finally looked up. Xel was not looking at him. He was looking at Ren. The body lay where it had fallen. Someone had closed his eyes and folded his hands across his chest, but his head was turned toward the firing port. The tablet was still on the floor. Xel walked to the body. He did not touch it. He stood over it and let his crystalline structure emit a low, sustained note, a frequency that vibrated in Leander's chest and made his teeth ache. "This one killed 6 of my kind," Xel said. He had no legs. He had a catastrophic wound to the lower extremities. He was obviously in severe physiological distress, and he continued to function until a direct hit destroyed his core organs. Leander said nothing. Xel turned. His body shifted color, a deep, resonant blue that pulsed like a heartbeat. I watched the engagement records. He guided the swarm through ocular tracking alone. The system was not designed for that interface method at his level of injury. He bypassed his own damage protocols. "He didn't bypass anything," Leander said. "He just didn't stop." "That is not possible. You saw it happen." Xel's structure clicked. The sound was soft, almost musical. He was processing, thinking, recalibrating something fundamental. "Why," Xel said slowly, "does your body not dictate your defeat?" Leander looked at Ren, then at the other wounded in the room, the ones who had dragged themselves to safety with broken limbs, the ones who kept firing with ruptured eardrums and shattered jaws. He looked back at Xel. "Because we are not done yet," he said. No philosophy, no rhetoric, just the simple biological fact of refusal. Xel stood very still. The light in his crystalline structure dimmed to a dull gray. When he spoke again, his voice carried no resonance, just the bare mechanics of sound. "I have been told your endurance is a choice, a defiance of the natural order, a corruption." His body shifted. A fracture line appeared across his thorax, a crack that had not been there before. "But I see now that it is not a choice. It is not a decision made in the moment of crisis. It is a design." He looked at Ren's body. "You do not have a shutdown switch." Leander waited. Xel's structure emitted a single harmonic tone. It was not anger. It was something closer to wonder, and wonder in a Flintshard was indistinguishable from fear. "I can stop this war," Xel said, "but you must help me understand what I am seeing." Leander looked at the dead soldier, at the hand that still reached for the firing button, at a body that had refused to stop until it had nothing left to refuse with. He did not know if he could trust a prisoner. He did not know if he could trust any Flintshard at all. But he looked at Ren, and he made his choice. The sterile white light of the human medical station felt like an accusation. Xel of the resonant voice stood before a wall of floating data records, his crystalline surface catching the glow and scattering it into a halo of refracted color. He had spent 5 cycles studying their medical archives. He had not stopped. The information was a revelation. Human pain tolerance was not a single threshold. It was a network of nested redundancies. When one pathway failed, another rooted around the damage. The central nervous system did not shut down under catastrophic load. It fragmented into local processing nodes that continued operating independently. A human whose spinal cord had been severed at the thoracic level could still move their arms, still speak, still give orders. The brain reorganized itself in real time. Xel vibrated at a resonance he recognized as intellectual hunger. It was elegant. It was efficient. It was the most terrifying biological adaptation he had ever modeled. He heard footsteps behind him. He turned. The human woman leaned on a cane, her gray-streaked hair pulled tight from a face that carried years of command. She moved with a limp favoring her left leg. The Hastings injury he knew from the ship's medical log, 3 cracked ribs, a fractured femur, internal bleeding that had been stabilized by nanomedic intervention but not fully repaired. He clicked his components together, a soft percussion, distant rainfall. She did not flinch at the sound. Xel said, "You are in pain." Maia Vane stopped beside him. Her eyes moved across the data records on the display. She did not answer for a long moment. "Always," she said. Xel processed the word. It implied a constant state, a background condition that did not interrupt function. He asked, "Can you function?" She looked at him. Her gaze was flat and direct. It reminded him of the resonant silence at the center of the chantry, the place where all frequencies canceled out and left only pure attention. "I have to," she said. She tapped her cane against the deck once, a sharp sound. Then she turned and walked toward the station's central command hub. Her gait was uneven but steady. The limp did not slow her. It was simply part of the rhythm. Xel watched her go. He felt something shift in his internal structure, a realignment he did not have a name for yet. The station's hull began to vibrate. It was a low tone at first, almost subsonic. Xel recognized it immediately. It was the resonant signature of a Flintshard fleet approaching a combat thrust. The vibration built in intensity, pressing through the deck plates, through the walls, through the recycled air. The human medical monitors on the wall changed their beeping rhythm in response. Leander Bix appeared in the doorway of the medical bay. His hands were stained with something dark. His eyes moved to Xel, then away. He said, "They found us." Maia's voice came over the station's internal comm. "Flat, controlled, all personnel to defensive stations. No one fires until I give the order." Xel moved toward the central hub. His crystalline legs clicked against the metal deck. The sound felt wrong here. In the chantry, every surface resonated with purpose. Here, the metal absorbed his resonances and gave nothing back. He felt muted, reduced. The main display in the command hub showed a tactical schematic. 37 Flintshard ships in formation, a battle cruiser at the center, smaller attack vessels flanking it in a pattern that spelled a single word: ultimatum. The broadcast arrived without warning. Kivon of the Shattered Choir appeared on every screen in the station. His crystalline form was dark with fury. The edges of his structure flickered with a pitch that made the human crew flinch. Xel did not flinch. He had absorbed that sound for 40 cycles. He knew exactly what it meant. Kivon said, "You harbor a heretic. You shelter a corruption that must be purified. Surrender Xel of the resonant voice to me. Surrender every human who has aided him. Your station will be dismantled piece by piece if you refuse." The channel went silent. Maia did not turn around. She kept her eyes on the tactical display. She said, "Xel, what do you want to do?" He had not expected the question. He had expected a command, a demand, a decision imposed from above. That was how the Flintshard operated. The resonance of the strongest voice determined the path. But these humans did not operate that way. Xel felt the vibration of his own uncertainty. It was a discordant frequency. Unpleasant. He said, "If you surrender me, he may spare the station." Leander Bix spoke from behind him. His voice was hard and flat. He said no. Maia turned, she looked at the medic, then she looked at Xel. She said, "We don't trade our people." Xel vibrated at a pitch he did not recognize. It was not resonance. It was not harmony. It was something closer to pressure, a build of energy with no release point. He looked at the humans around him. They were afraid. He could see it in the tension of their shoulders, the shallow breathing, the way their hands hovered near their weapons. But not one of them suggested surrender. He understood then, this was not courage. It was a structural necessity, the same way his crystalline lattice could not reorganize itself without fracturing. These humans could not stop. It was not a choice. It was biology. Xel moved to the comm station. His crystalline fingers found the interface. He began recording a message. He said, "My name is Xel of the Resonant Voice. I'm a scientist of the Chantry of Echoes. I was sent to study the anomaly of human persistence. I have studied it. I have modeled it. I have understood it." He paused, the tone of his voice shifted. He made it carry across every available channel. "They do not break. This is not a corruption. This is evolution. They have adapted to damage in ways we have not. They root around it. They continue functioning when their bodies should have failed. This is not a flaw in the natural order. It is a refinement of it." He looked at the camera. He imagined the 700 minds of the Chantry hearing his words. "We can learn from them. We must." The broadcast ended. For a long moment, nothing happened. The tactical display showed the Flintshard fleet holding position. Then the formation shifted, not in unison, in fragments. Half the ships broke formation. They drifted away from the battle cruiser. They did not retreat. They simply stopped advancing. The other half held, the battle cruiser and 16 attack vessels, Kivon's loyalists. Xel felt the weight of his choice settle into his crystalline structure. It was a cold sensation. Hollow. He had spoken the truth. The truth had cost him everything. He could never return to the Chantry. He could never resonate with his own people again. The frequencies that had shaped him from formation would never touch him again. He looked at his reflection in the blank display. He saw a shape that was no longer Flintshard. He saw a shape that was becoming something else. The hollow feeling had a name. He searched the human medical archives in his memory and found it. Loneliness. Leander Bix stepped up beside him. The medic's hands were clean now. He said that was brave. Xel clicked his components together. The sound was soft. He said it was necessary. The station's hull vibrated again. Closer this time, Kivon's ships had docked. Maia Vane straightened her shoulders. She adjusted her grip on the cane. She said, "They're coming aboard. Weapons hot. No one fires unless I give the order." She looked at Xel. "Stay close to me." Xel followed her down the corridor. The white light of the station felt harsh and exposed. He missed the resonant darkness of the chantry. He missed the vibration of 1,000 minds aligned in purpose. But he did not slow down. The airlock cycled open somewhere ahead. Heavy footsteps on metal. The subsonic pressure of Kivon's presence pressed against Xel's core structure. Kivon's voice echoed through the corridor. "Give me the heretic. Give me the humans. This ends quietly." Maia stopped walking. She planted her cane on the deck. She did not answer. The footsteps came closer. Xel could see the mass of crystalline shapes at the end of the corridor. Kivon at the center, his form dark with fury. The air hummed with a pitch that made the human crew press their hands to their ears. Maia did not move. She said, "You're not taking anyone from my station." The footsteps stopped. The standoff began with weapons charged on both sides. The negotiation hall was never meant for this. Maia Vane stood at the center of the converted cargo bay, her cane tapping once against the deck as she shifted weight off her bad leg. The station's industrial lighting cast long shadows across the space. Shelving brackets still lined the walls where merchandise once sat. Now they held nothing but the echoes of trade that would never happen again. Kivon of the Shattered Choir faced her from 20 paces away. His crystalline body caught the light in sharp angles, each shard vibrating at a frequency that pressed against her skull like a migraine finding purchase. A low hum filled the air, subsonic, insistent. Behind him stood his champion. Vac was larger than Kivon, denser, with edges that looked sharp enough to cut steel. The shard warrior radiated heat, thermal stress bleeding from his surface in visible shimmer. Behind Maia stood Leander Bix, his hands clasped behind his back, his cuticles raw from picking. Xel stood beside him, a prisoner in all but name, his smaller crystalline frame catching the light like oil on water. And beside Xel stood Marine Toril, young, 23, a face that still had soft edges. He stood at parade rest, his eyes fixed on the Flintshard champion with the flat assessment of someone calculating distance and angles. Kivon spoke first. His voice carried harmonics that made the deck plates vibrate. "You will surrender all humans in this sector. You will turn over Xel of the resonant voice for dismantlement. You will withdraw to the systems we designate, and you will never cross the veil again. Those are the terms." Maia waited 3 full seconds. Then she said no. The chamber went still. The subsonic pressure increased. "You are in no position to refuse," Kivon said. 37 ships, a station that cannot outrun a shuttle, a crew that cannot fight. Maia tapped her cane once. The sound was small against the hum of Flintshard fury. "You came here to break us," she said. "You think that's what we are, something that can be broken, something that has a limit." Kivon's shards vibrated faster. The air grew thick with pressure. "All things have limits, all things break. It is the first law of the shard. The universe demands silence eventually." Maia looked at Toril. He met her eyes and gave a single nod. "Then let us test your law," she said. "One human, one Flintshard, no weapons, no technology. The winner decides the terms of peace." Kivon went silent. The hum of his body dropped to a frequency that made the lights flicker. He was thinking, he was calculating. He was confident. "Every living thing can be broken," he said. "It is the nature of existence. I accept your trial." He turned to Vac and spoke in the grinding language of the Flintshard, a series of clicks and resonant tones that translated roughly to a single command. "Break it." The sealed decontamination chamber was small, 20 paces wide, 20 paces long. The walls were bare metal, scarred from decades of cargo handling. The air recyclers had been disabled. The chamber would use whatever atmosphere was inside, nothing more. Toril walked in first. He rolled his shoulders. He cracked his neck. He looked like a man about to lift a heavy crate, not a man about to be broken by a creature made of living crystal. Vac entered behind him, the door sealed with a hydraulic hiss. The observation window showed everything. Maia watched from the other side, her hand tight on her cane. Leander stood beside her, his breathing shallow. Xel stood at the back of the room, his crystalline structure dimmed to a dull gray. Kivon stood at the window's center. His shards caught the light and scattered it. Vac moved first. He did not strike. He opened his body and released sonic resonance, a frequency that should have collapsed human lungs, that should have stopped hearts, that should have driven any organic creature to its knees in agony. Toral's face went white, his jaw clenched, his hands curled into fists. He did not fall. He took a step forward. Vac increased the frequency. The metal walls began to vibrate. The observation window developed a hairline crack. The sound was a physical pressure, a weight that pressed against everything in the room. Toral took another step. Blood began to drip from his nose. His eyes were wide, pupils dilated, but he kept walking. Vac shifted tactics. He closed the distance and struck. The impact was clean. A crystalline arm connected with Toral's left forearm, and the bone broke with a sound that carried through the deck plating. Toral's arm, bent at an angle arms were not supposed to bend. He did not stop. He did not scream. He switched his weight to his other side and kept moving forward. Leander pressed his palm against the observation window. His face was pale. His voice was barely a whisper. The pain, he should be in shock. His body should be shutting down. Maia said nothing, she watched. Vac struck again. This time the blow connected with Toral's right knee. The joint gave with a wet crack and the Marine collapsed forward, catching himself on his broken arm, his face twisting as the bone ground against itself. He pushed himself up. He stood on one leg. His broken arm hung at his side, useless. His face was a mask of blood and sweat and something else, something that looked like determination but was older than that. Something that looked like a refusal to accept the premise. Vac hesitated. It was a small thing. A fraction of a second where the Shard warrior's body stopped moving. A pause in the attack pattern, a moment of confusion. The champion had never encountered a foe that refused to reach its breaking point. Toral took a step forward on his broken leg. The sound was wrong. The rhythm was wrong. Every step was a wet grinding noise, bone scraping against bone, cartilage giving way, but he kept moving, one step, then another. A heartbeat of displacement. Vac recoiled. The Shard warrior's body began to emit a high-pitched frequency, a harmonic scream that made everyone in the observation room wince. The air shimmered around Vac's crystalline form. His structure flickered, caught between combat protocols and a reality that did not match his expectations. He could not process what he was seeing. The human was broken. The human should be down. The human should be silent. The human was still walking. Toral reached Vac. He raised his remaining good hand and pressed it against the Shard warrior's chest. It was not a strike. It was a touch, a gesture of contact. The harmonic scream stopped. Vac's body went still. The shards that made up his form began to shift, realigning, as his cognitive systems attempted to rebuild their understanding of the universe. The human stood before him, dripping blood onto the metal deck, his broken arm hanging, his leg giving way under him, his breath ragged and wet. And he did not fall. Kivon watched from the observation window. His shards were motionless. The subsonic pressure had vanished. The air in the room was still. He had spent centuries believing in the first law. All things break, all things fade, all things reach their limit and fall silent. He had killed thousands of humans on that belief. He had ordered the dismantlement of their ships. He had watched their stations burn. He had told himself he was purifying the universe, removing a corruption that defied the natural order. But the human was still standing. The human had taken a broken arm, a shattered knee, a body that should have shut down from pain alone. The human had kept walking. Kivon realized the truth in a single moment that cracked through his consciousness like a fracture spreading through crystal. They were not broken. They were not corrupted. They were built differently. Not defiance, not courage, not any quality of spirit or will. Biology. A body that simply did not accept the premise that damage meant silence. A system that kept running when it should have stopped. Everything he had done, every ship he had destroyed, every life he had taken, every prayer he had offered to the first law. All of it was based on a false premise. He was not wrong about the universe. The universe still demanded that things break and fade, but he was wrong about humans. Humans did not break the way other things broke. Humans kept moving. The trial was over. Maia Vane limped into the decontamination chamber. She did not look at Kivon. She did not look at the observation window. She walked to Toral and put her hand on his shoulder. The Marine looked at her. His eyes were glassy, unfocused, but there was a thread of awareness still holding. "Did we win, Commander?" Maia looked at the Flintshard champion standing motionless, his crystalline structure still locked in the grip of cognitive failure. She looked at Kivon through the observation window. "Yes," she said, "we won. The war was over." But the peace was untested, fragile, and built on a single human refusing to fall down. And somewhere in the depths of the shattered choir, 700 minds were already beginning to question what they had been told. The deck plates hummed under Thaddeus Cole's boots as he watched the tactical display. The Demeter system spread before him like a wound, scars of debris trails, the burned husks of 3 human frigates, and the glittering remains of Flintshard cruisers that had been turned to gravel by the railgun drone swarms. He hated every second of this. Cole touched the comm panel and opened a channel to the picket fleet. "Terminus actual to all drone controllers. Begin withdrawal pattern Delta 7. Bring the pickets back to secondary defensive perimeter." The acknowledgement came back in a chorus of tired voices. On the display, the tiny icons representing his railgun drone units began to shift. Thousands of fist-sized killers, each carrying a single kinetic slug, pulled back from the forward positions. They left gaps, vulnerable gaps. His flag lieutenant glanced up from her station. "Sir, the Flintshard haven't pulled back their forward scouts. We're exposing our port flank." "I know what we're exposing, Lieutenant." Cole's voice was flat. "That's the point." The gesture of trust left his fleet naked. His gut screamed at him. Every instinct forged over 30 years of service told him this was suicide. But Maia Vane had asked him to try, and the woman who limped onto his bridge with a cane and a Flintshard heretic at her side had earned the right to make that request. Cole turned from the display. Xel stood near the comm station, his crystalline structure catching the soft blue light of the consoles. The fractures in his shards had been repaired, but the scars were visible, thin lines where the crystals had been fused back together. He clicked his components together in that soft percussion that sounded like distant rain. "The hardliners will see this as weakness," Xel said. His voice carried that resonant undertone like a bell struck through water. "They will interpret withdrawal as fear. Let them interpret it however they want." Cole walked to the center of the bridge, where a holodable showed the system in 3 dimensions. "They know what those drones did to their fleet at the Vale. They know we pulled them back by choice. That's the message." Maia stood beside the holodable, her weight resting on her cane. The gray in her hair seemed more pronounced under the bridge lights. Her left hand tapped a slow rhythm against the metal. She was reading the tactical data, her eyes tracking the retreating drone icons. "They'll test us," she said. It was not a question. "Of course they will." Cole crossed his arms. "Trust isn't a switch you flip. It's a wound that heals slow. We're still bleeding." The comm panel chimed, "Priority encryption." Cole hit the receive button. The voice that came through was tight, controlled, and wrong. It was the voice of someone reporting a death they had not yet fully processed. "Terminus, this is Relay Station Delphi. We have an incident at Transit Point Gamma 9. A diplomatic shuttle en route to the Vale Conference has been destroyed. Repeat, shuttle is destroyed. No survivors. 23 passengers confirmed lost." The bridge went quiet. Cole felt the words settle into his chest like shrapnel. 23 diplomats, men and women who had volunteered to sit across from the species that had been trying to kill them for 18 months. People who believed in the negotiation process. People he had told that the Flintshard could be reasoned with. He looked at Xel. The crystalline being had gone still. His clicking stopped. The air around him vibrated with a pressure that pressed against Cole's ears. Maia's hands stopped tapping. She straightened, her weight coming off the cane. "Who did it?" "Preliminary sensor data suggests a hardliner cell," the voice from Delphi said. "Small craft, non-standard transponder, launched from the debris field near the old cruiser graveyard. They bypassed our pickets." Cole stared at the display, at the gaps he had ordered, at the vulnerable flanks he had created. His fault. His trust. He opened his mouth to speak, but Maia was already moving. Her cane struck the deck hard. "I want a strike package ready in 10 minutes. We know where those cells hide. We know their resupply routes. We burn every cache, every safe house, every sanctuary they have in this system." Xel raised a crystalline arm. "Maia, wait. This is what they want. A reaction, a breach of the ceasefire. It gives the hardliners the moral ground to rally the free systems against us." "Moral ground?" Maia's voice was cold. They just murdered 23 unarmed people. There is no moral ground. Cole watched them, the ambassador and the heretic, a human woman who had survived the veil by sheer stubborn refusal to die, a Flintshard who had betrayed his own species' doctrine because he believed in something called evolution. Two people from worlds that should have been enemies, standing on his bridge, arguing about what to do next. He made a decision. It surprised him. Maia stand down the strike package. She turned to face him. Her eyes held that look, the one that said she had expected betrayal from everyone except him. Admiral. I'm not done. Cole held up a hand. He walked to the comm panel and opened a channel to his logistics officer. I need an unarmed shuttle, single-passenger configuration, no weapons, no countermeasures, ready it for departure in 20 minutes. The logistics officer acknowledged. Cole turned back to Maia and Xel. I'm sending a data core to Flintshard Command. Full tactical positions, every human ship in the Demeter system, every drone position, every supply route, all of it. Maia's jaw tightened. You're giving them the entire order of battle. Yes. They'll know where every vulnerable target is. Yes. They'll be able to destroy us in a single coordinated strike. Cole nodded. That's the bet. Xel's crystals vibrated. The subsonic pressure in the air increased, making the flag lieutenant grip her console. Admiral, I do not understand this strategy. You are surrendering the one advantage your species has maintained, the uncertainty of your positions. We're not surrendering anything. Cole picked up a datapad from the holodable and began loading the tactical data. We're showing them something they've never seen from an enemy, complete trust. Maia's hand tightened on her cane. And if the hardliners intercept the shuttle, then we're dead, all of us, every ship in this system. Cole met her eyes. But they won't intercept it because they won't believe we're actually doing this. The hardliners think in terms of ambush, deception, weakness to exploit. They can't process a genuine act of trust. It's outside their framework. He loaded the final data packet and sealed the core. The polished obsidian sphere sat in his palm, humming with that pitch just below human hearing. A quantum-entangled node paired with the one on the shuttle. The data would transfer the moment the shuttle entered Flintshard space. Xel stepped forward. His crystalline structure caught the light, fracturing it into 1,000 tiny rainbows. This is not a human tactic. This is not anything I have observed in 300 years of watching your species. I know, Cole handed the core to a waiting ensign. That's why it's going to work. The ensign left. The bridge fell into a waiting silence. 23 minutes later, the shuttle launched. Cole watched it on the display, a tiny, unarmed speck moving toward the Flintshard fleet. No escort, no weapons, just a man in a sphere carrying the complete surrender of human tactical doctrine. If this failed, he would be responsible for the extinction of his species. If it worked, he would have changed the rules of engagement forever. Maia stood beside him, her cane tapping a slow rhythm against the deck. She did not speak. She watched the shuttle icon crawl across the display, and Cole saw something in her posture shift, a loosening of tension, a release of breath she had been holding since the Hastings had drifted into Flintshard territory. Why did you do it? She asked finally. Cole stared at the display. The shuttle was passing the outer debris field now. No Flintshard ships had moved to intercept it. The hardliner cells were nowhere to be seen. Because we have to be something other than what they thought we were. The words came out flat, unadorned. He had not planned them. They simply arrived in his mouth and left. Maia nodded. She did not say anything else. The shuttle reached the Flintshard command ship. The data core transferred. The tactical positions of every human vessel in the Demeter system now sat in the hands of the species that had been trying to kill them. The bridge waited. 2 hours passed. Then the comm panel chimed, and a Flintshard voice came through, carrying a tone that sounded almost like relief. Terminus, we have received your transmission. We are processing. Cole let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. The piece was not one yet, but the message had landed. The data core had been received, and for the first time in 18 months, no one on either side was taking a shot. Maia leaned on her cane, her voice was quiet. What now? Cole looked at the display. The Flintshard fleet had not moved. The drone pickets were still withdrawn. A fragile stillness held the system together. Now we wait, he said, and we prove that trust is not the same as surrender. Xel stepped between them. His crystalline body pulsed with a soft blue light. The hardliners will try again. This is not over. No, Cole agreed. But we just showed them something they've never seen, an enemy who handed them the keys and dared them to use them. And if they do, Maia asked. Cole allowed himself a small, hard smile. Then we build something new, that's what we do, we break, we survive, we keep going. He turned back to the display. The shuttle was returning empty. The data core was out of his hands. The universe still demanded that things break and fade, but humans had never agreed to that demand. And now, for the first time, the Flintshard were beginning to understand what that meant. The cold glass of the viewport frosted at the edges where the station's heat bled into the void. Maia Vane stood with both hands on her cane, watching the nebula turn slow spirals of red and violet. The dying star at its heart pulsed every 17 seconds. A rhythm, a heartbeat she had learned to count over the 6 months since the war ended. Xel stood beside her. His crystalline structure caught the nebula light and scattered it across the deck plates in fractured rainbows. The repairs were visible if you knew where to look. A slightly darker hue along his left armature, a denser clustering near his core where the fractures had been deepest. He did not click when he thought anymore. The habit had faded. I no longer feel entirely Flintshard, Xel said. Maia tapped her cane once against the deck. The sound was sharp and clean in the observation bay's silence. Define Flintshard, she said. He vibrated at a frequency she had learned to read as contemplation. Low and steady. A hum that settled in the bones rather than the ears. The chantry would define it as purity of form, adherence to the first law, the acceptance that all things break and fall silent. He paused. I have watched humans survive things that should have silenced them permanently. I have watched them refuse to break. And I find I no longer believe the first law is a description of reality. It is a preference, a choice. Maia turned from the window. The station stretched behind them, a converted asteroid honeycombed with corridors and labs and living quarters. Humans and Flintshard moved through the same spaces now. They did not flinch from each other. They worked together. They ate together. They argued over coffee and resonance frequencies and the best way to calibrate a targeting array. It had taken 18 months and 3,000 dead to reach this point. I am tired, Maia said. Xel's vibration shifted, higher, a note she had never heard from him before. Tiredness is a human concept I have learned to respect, he said. It implies continuation despite depletion. You have been tired since the day we met. You have not stopped. No, Maia said, that's not the same thing. She watched the nebula pulse again, 17 seconds. She counted the gap without meaning to. When the Hastings died, she said, I felt something break inside me, not my bones, something else, something I thought I would never get back. But I kept moving because the crew needed me to keep moving. And then the war needed me to keep moving. And now the station needs me to keep moving. She looked down at her cane. I don't think I remember what it feels like to stop. Xel was quiet for a long moment. Then he shifted his crystals in a way that approximated a human posture of attention. I remember what I was before, he said. I was a voice in the chantry. I believed in the first law with every facet of my being. I believed that silence was the natural state of all things. I believed that resistance was corruption. He paused. That belief is gone. I do not know what I am now, but I know I am not what I was. Maia almost smiled. Then we're both lost, she said. Perhaps that is the point, Xel said. The announcement came over the station's internal network. A voice Maia recognized. Leander Bix, with the clipped precision of a man who had spent too many years delivering bad news and had finally learned to deliver good news the same way. Director Vane, Representative Xel, the test is ready. We are waiting for your authorization. Maia pushed herself upright. Her knee protested. She ignored it. Let's go watch the future, she said. The firing range was a converted cargo bay on the station's lower deck. The ceiling had been reinforced. The walls had been lined with sensor arrays. At the far end, a holographic target display showed a simulated enemy formation moving through a simulated asteroid field. The weapon system sat in the center of the bay. It did not look impressive. A cluster of railgun drones, each the size of a human fist, arranged in a hexagonal rack. A quantum comm node bolted to the wall. A Flintshard resonance array mounted above it, its crystals humming at a frequency that made the air feel thick. Leander stood at the control station, his thick forearms resting on the console. He had stopped picking at his cuticles. The habit had faded with the war. He looked older now, 29 going on 50. 17 drones in the active swarm, he said. Each one paired with a resonance tag. The Flintshard targeting algorithm calculates the optimal firing solution based on the target's vibrational signature. The human guidance system handles the ballistic correction. Maia leaned on her cane. "Say it in plain language," she said. Leander smiled. It was a small smile, a tired one. Human ammunition, Flintshard eyes, they worked together. Xel moved to the resonance array. His crystals brushed against the array's surface, and the air in the bay shifted. A low harmonic built in the walls. The drones hummed in response, their metallic shells vibrating at a frequency that matched Xel's own. "Ready," Xel said. Maia nodded. "Fire." The drones launched. 17 metallic cylinders streaked across the bay in a spread pattern that looked random. Maia had seen enough railgun deployments to know it was not random. The pattern was calculated. The trajectories intersected at precise points in space and time. The holographic target formation shifted. Evasive maneuvers, fast, efficient. The drones corrected. They did not correct individually. They corrected as a single organism, their trajectories adjusting in perfect synchronization with the resonance array's guidance. The first drone struck the lead target. A flash of light, the target dissolved. The remaining 16 struck in a cascade that lasted less than a second. Every target gone, every trajectory true. The bay fell silent. Leander let out a breath he had been holding. "It worked," he said. Maia watched the holographic debris fade. "It worked," she repeated. Xel stepped back from the resonance array. His crystals were vibrating at a frequency Maia recognized. Satisfaction. A deep, resonant hum that she had learned to read as close to joy as a Flintshard could experience. "A new thing," Xel said. "A thing that did not exist before. Human and Flintshard joined in a single purpose." Maia looked at the empty bay. "It's a start," she said. The signal came 3 hours later. Maia was in her quarters reviewing the test data when the station's sensors picked up something outside the mapped spectrum. A pulse, rhythmic, slow, vast. She made it to the observation bay in under 2 minutes. Her cane struck the deck with each step. Her knee screamed. She ignored it. Xel was already there. His crystals were vibrating at a frequency she had never seen before. Not contemplation, not satisfaction, something else. Something that unsettled her. "What is it?" Maia said. Xel did not turn. "It is a signal," he said. "It is coming from beyond the galactic plane, from outside the mapped universe." Leander arrived behind her, breathing hard. "I've got it on every instrument we have," he said. "It's not natural, it's structured, it's a message." Maia moved to the window. The nebula glowed in its slow, dying rhythm. But there was something else beneath it now. A pulse that was not the star's heartbeat. A pulse that was slower, deeper. It resonated in her chest. It resonated in the deck plates. It resonated in the glass of the viewport, which vibrated at a frequency just below human hearing. "It feels like it's coming from inside me," Maia said. Xel turned. His crystals caught the light of the dying star and the light of the unknown signal together, and for a moment he looked like something new. Something that had never existed before. "Because it is," he said. "The signal carries a resonance that matches the vibrational frequency of your species, and mine. It was designed to be felt, not heard." The pulse continued, steady, certain, a heartbeat the size of the galaxy. Xel closed his eyes. His crystals shifted as he resonated with the signal. The air in the bay changed. The pressure dropped. The temperature fell. "It is a greeting," Xel said, "and a question." Maia waited. Xel opened his eyes. They were not the same eyes she had looked into when they first met. They were changed, deeper, full of something she could not name. "It asks, are you ready?" The observation bay fell silent. The pulse continued, 17 seconds between each beat. Maia counted without meaning to. 17 seconds of silence. 17 seconds of waiting. 17 seconds of the question repeating itself across an expanse of space that she could not comprehend. She looked at Xel, he looked back at her, and in that moment she understood. The war was not the main event. It was a trial. Humanity and Flintshard had been tested against each other to see if they could survive, to see if they could adapt, to see if they could forge something new from the wreckage of their old selves. And they had passed. But the test was not over. The signal changed. The pulse remained steady and deep, but something shifted beneath it. A new layer, a new frequency, a structure that resolved into something Maia could almost understand. It is no longer a greeting, Xel said. His voice was different, slower, more careful. It is a countdown. The deck plates vibrated. The glass of the viewport hummed. The air pressed against Maia's skin like the weight of a distant storm. Xel resonated with the signal. His crystals absorbed the new frequency, translated it. 4,000 years, he said. They will arrive in 4,000 years. Maia stared at the nebula, at the dying star, at the vast, empty space beyond. 4,000 years, a geological blink, a cosmic breath, a single pause in the long rhythm of the universe. The unbroken line, Xel said, his voice barely more than a harmonic whisper. It has been forged, and now it must hold. The signal pulsed again, 17 seconds, then another, steady, certain, a question that would not wait forever. Maia lifted her chin. Then we hold, she said. She turned from the window. Her cane struck the deck. The sound was sharp and clean in the silence. Behind her the nebula glowed. The dying star pulsed. The signal counted down. And the story was not over. It was only beginning.